Ahmed Abdullah, 42 years old, is a well-known and ambitious doctor in his field. On December 31st, 2018, New Year's Eve, Ahmed woke up. His wife prepared breakfast for him, and he greeted her along with his daughter and two sons before leaving the house to run some errands. When he returned home, however, the sight that greeted him upon entering was utterly shocking. So, what's the story? Peace be upon you and welcome to a new episode. Today's case will show us treachery, vileness, and the worst kind of betrayal that unfortunately happened in Egypt in 2018. The entire case begins when Dr. Ahmed Abdullah arrives at his apartment on the fifth floor in the Saka neighborhood in Kafr El-Sheikh Governorate. He is greeted by an unimaginable sight, blood everywhere, literally throughout the apartment. His wife Mona and their three children are all slaughtered, but their bodies are placed in different locations. Ahmed, in shock, starts screaming, "My wife and children have all been killed. Please, someone help me." Naturally, he goes into a hysterical state upon seeing the horrific scene, and the building's residents gather in the apartment. They immediately call the police, who arrive to secure the apartment, now a crime scene. When the police arrive, they find Mona, who is 30 years old and also a doctor like her husband, lying dead. Next to her is her 4-year-old daughter, Layla, and they also discover the bodies of the other two children, Abdullah, the eldest at 8 years old, and his brother Omar, who is 6, both murdered in the same manner as their mother. However, upon examining the scene, the police find everything in the apartment to be in its place. There are no broken doors, no signs of forced entry, and nothing seems disturbed except for the wardrobe in the bedroom. This indicates that the killer must have been allowed in, suggesting that Mona knew and trusted the person, or perhaps it was a plumber, electrician, or worker. At the same time, something strange is discovered. Gold has been stolen from the apartment. This could mean that the motive was theft, but at the same time, why would someone steal and murder a mother and her children in such a brutal way? The police took all 4 bodies for autopsy and forensic examination while they searched every inch of the apartment, which consisted of 3 rooms, a living room, a bathroom, and a kitchen. The police then began questioning the neighbors, the building's doorman, and both Mona's and Ahmed's families, asking if anyone had seen anything suspicious or if anyone from the doctor's or the doctor's wife's relatives had visited during the time Ahmed was away running errands. The police also requested footage from surveillance cameras near the building to check who entered during the time of the crime. They also questioned Ahmed, who was naturally in a state of distress. But before we learn the results of the investigation, let's rewind 9 years.
حسبي الله ونعم الوكيل حسبي الله ونعم الوكيل حسبي الله ونعم الوكيل.
In 2010, specifically, Mona Mohammed al-Sijini, a beautiful young woman from Kafr El-Sheikh, had a very ordinary childhood. She lived with her family, all from the middle class, but the most important thing in her life was her studies. She always ranked among the top students throughout her life. She completed her secondary education and enrolled in the Faculty of Science, where she also graduated. After graduation, she worked as a lab doctor. As time passed, a respectable young man, a doctor, proposed to her. The two families didn't know each other well because it was a traditional marriage. However, after Mona's family inquired about Ahmed and his family, they found that they were respectable people who had a lot in common, all from Kafr El-Sheikh, and their children were well educated, just like Mona and Ahmed. The families were socially and intellectually compatible. The young man appeared to be respectable, and it was clear that he would take good care of their daughter. The engagement lasted a while so they could get to know each other better. After this, both felt more comfortable and married in 2010. A few months later, both families received the wonderful news that Mona was pregnant, and in 2011, she gave birth to their first son, Abdullah, who looked a lot like his father. After Abdullah's birth, Ahmed received a job offer in Saudi Arabia, specifically in Yanbu. Naturally, Ahmed was thrilled about this new job, as it was a great opportunity to improve his and his family's income and career growth. He convinced Mona to leave her job in Egypt and move with him, as he felt he wouldn't be able to live there alone. Mona, although settled and successful in her job in Egypt, agreed because Ahmed assured her that she would find better job opportunities in Saudi Arabia with a higher salary, which would improve their living and financial standards. They both moved to Saudi Arabia, and Ahmed started working. Mona too found two jobs. She worked as a professor at a university in Yanbu and also as a lab doctor in one of the laboratories. Initially, they had agreed that their stay in Saudi Arabia would be temporary, not lasting too long. They planned to save enough money to buy a good apartment and also save for when Ahmed would return to Egypt to open his own clinic. Mona promised Ahmed that she would support him in every possible way. She worked tirelessly between two jobs, managing the house and children. Their life became much better than it had been in Egypt. She helped with the expenses and saved her entire salary, which over time increased because she worked two jobs while Ahmed worked only one. They had another son, Omar, and a daughter, Layla, in Saudi Arabia. They lived in Saudi Arabia for almost 8.5 years. Their life was stable, they both saved money, and everything seemed perfect. Mona advanced in her career, and Ahmed was also successful in his work. Then one day, Ahmed surprised Mona by telling her that they were all going to leave their jobs and return to Egypt. Mona felt a strange feeling and asked herself what happened suddenly and what this hasty and surprising decision was. Our life was going well, everything was successful, and everything was good. Why are we going back now when we haven't even saved all the money we agreed upon, and now we have to look for work from scratch? But after many discussions, Mona discovered that Ahmed wasn't taking her opinion into consideration. He was just informing her. Mona wasn't fully convinced by his decision, but like any loyal and respectful wife, she couldn't refuse or say anything because she felt that her place was wherever her husband was, and the important thing was that they were together no matter the place. They both returned to Egypt, to Kafr El-Sheikh, where they had originally lived, and they started arranging their apartment. Ahmed began preparing to open his private clinic using the money they had saved together, which they had agreed upon. Mona also found a good job in a lab. However, from the moment they returned to Egypt, many problems started occurring between them. Mona began to feel that Ahmed's family didn't like her and interfered in every detail of her life. His family was very upset that she had a strong, independent personality, worked, and had her own money. At first, Mona tried to avoid interacting with Ahmed's family, especially his mother, and she tried to minimize contact with them to avoid problems. But still, the problems grew because his mother kept intervening more and more in their lives. Mona would find that his mother knew the smallest details about them, like how much they spent, what they did, what they ate, and how they were raising their children. Ahmed, however, saw his family's behavior as normal and natural, and he blamed Mona, thinking she was exaggerating the issue. He believed that Mona was making a bigger deal of it than it was. He had always shared everything with his family, even when he was a child, and he felt Mona should just accept it. He thought that no matter what his mother said or did, Mona should always be nice to her, treat her well, and welcome her warmly. The situation continued, and the problems escalated, even though Mona tried to handle the issue and keep their interactions minimal to avoid conflicts. However, the problems didn't end because of his mother's insistence on interfering in their life. Mona also felt that his family was inciting him against her, especially when he went to visit them and returned as a different person. Eventually, one day, Ahmed came back from his mother's and informed her that they were no longer going to open the clinic they had agreed to. Ahmed reversed his decision, saying that he would only work in the hospital he was employed at. As usual, Ahmed didn't seek her opinion. He just informed her. Mona felt like her entire life was falling apart because of his family. She felt they had changed him and altered his perspective, convincing him that she was spending money frivolously and wanting to waste the savings on a clinic. They told him he already had a job and didn't need one, and that she was trying to control him. Mona remained patient and endured, thinking that perhaps time would change things, and Ahmed might come back to his senses and realize that she truly wanted what was best for him. She didn't think opening the clinic was a bad idea, but that she was trying to help him grow and achieve something significant. The problems continued to grow, and Ahmed's mother eventually asked him to divorce Mona, believing that he wasn't being a man as long as he was married to her. She thought Mona controlled everything and was trying to impose her will on him. Then, on New Year's Eve, the night when everyone celebrates and hopes for more blessings in their lives, Mona would witness something unimaginable. Now we know the whole story. What did Ahmed say during the investigations when the police asked him what exactly happened that day? Ahmed said that on December 31st, 2018, he woke up like any other day to go to work and run some errands. Mona made him breakfast, but on that day, Ahmed told her not to trouble herself and that he would bring lunch back with him from work. This was to give her a break and also to make up for the tension and many problems that had occurred between them recently. He told the police during the investigation that he finished his work and had ordered lunch to be delivered to the house. He opened the door, and we know what he saw as soon as he opened it. This was Ahmed's testimony. As for the neighbors, they testified during the investigation that when they saw Ahmed at that moment, he was in a hysterical state. He was crying terribly, then suddenly went silent, then asked in confusion, "What is happening?" After a while, he calmed down and contacted his wife's family, telling them what happened and saying, "Help me, Mona is dead." A little while later, he asked again, "What happened?" As if he was in denial at that moment. This was the neighbor's testimony. So, what about the results of the forensic examination and the cameras? The forensic examination, after examining the 4 bodies, found that all of them were killed in the same way, by throat slashing. But the only difference was with Abdullah, who had a wound in his chest and arm, as though he was trying to resist. As for the cameras, there were no cameras in the house or in front of the building that captured anything. But let's not forget, the police discovered there were no signs of forced entry into the apartment and nothing was broken. The only thing missing was Mona's gold. This detail was also strange because only Mona's gold was stolen, while the money they both had saved was still in the house, and only the closet was found on the floor, disorganized. At this point, the police began to think, if it was a robbery, why was only the gold stolen and not the money? Why was the killer so precise? The police looked for any strange fingerprints in the apartment, but there were no unusual prints, which was also strange. The killer was smart, meticulous, and had left no evidence behind. Since there were no other suspects and no one had seen anyone else coming to the apartment, the police's suspicions naturally turned to the husband, Ahmed. The police decided to investigate him and apply some pressure until any other evidence or person came forward to disprove the suspicion. Literally, they had no one else to consider. In cases like this, they are always suspicious of the husband first. Ahmed insisted that he could never do such a thing to his wife and children. He said, "This woman is kind and humble, and throughout our marriage, she has helped me with everything. There's only goodness between us. Yes, sometimes we have problems, but they are normal problems that would never lead to murder. The police then asked the neighbors to tell them about Mona and Ahmed's relationship. The neighbors told them something different. They said they often heard Ahmed and Mona arguing loudly and fighting all the time. The last time they heard them fighting was the day before the crime, but they didn't intervene. However, on that day, the neighbors said, "We were actually thinking about calling Mona's family because we heard them fighting a lot, but we didn't have any way to contact Mona's family, so we didn't call or do anything." This was when the police's suspicions about Ahmed grew again. And this time, they asked him, "Ahmed, tell us in detail, step by step, exactly what you did that day." He says, Ahmed says he left his house in the morning and went to work. "You can verify this from my workplace. After finishing work, I went to the carpenter because Mona's brother was getting married in 10 days and had asked me to bring a carpenter that day. After arranging with the carpenter, I left him and went to a fish shop to get lunch, as I had agreed with Mona. I placed the order at the fish shop, and instead of standing and waiting in front of the shop, I asked them to deliver the food to my house. You can verify this as well." At the same time, the carpenter called me and told me that he wouldn't be able to come at the scheduled time and that we should postpone it to another day. Here's the carpenter's number so you can call him and verify everything I'm saying, and also the fish shop's number to confirm that I called, went, and did all these things. After that, I went to a branch of my bank, and here's the transaction number from the bank to prove I was there. The police verified everything Ahmed said, and then they checked with his workplace to confirm his name was recorded in the attendance log. They also contacted the carpenter and the fish shop and confirmed all his statements. At this point, everything seemed to lead to a dead end. Ahmed might be innocent and have no connection to the murder of Mona or his 3 children, and there might be a fugitive criminal. But the police still had doubts, especially about Ahmed. They decided to focus more on the details Ahmed gave about his movements that day, because the devil is in the details, and it was the details that would catch Ahmed in his lies. The police decided to go first to the hospital where Ahmed worked and question his colleagues to see if he really went to work that day and if anyone had seen him. Ahmed's colleague, Esra Yahya, told the police, "I have information I don't know whether it matters or not." Esraya said that 3 days before the crime, Ahmed called her more than 3 times and asked her to write his name in the attendance log because he wouldn't be coming that day. He asked her to take his place at work because he had some errands to run and didn't want to be deducted a day's pay or have it count as a vacation day. Ezra agreed and wrote his name in the attendance log for that day. This was the mistake that exposed Ahmed as a liar. He hadn't gone to work as he claimed. At this point, the police began to catch on to a thread that proved there was a discrepancy in the details Ahmed had shared. They started to apply pressure on Ahmed until he finally admitted, "Yes, I killed my wife and children, but it wasn't my plan. I only intended to kill her, but I was forced to kill the others." He confessed that he threw the weapon and the gold he took from the house and buried everything in a secluded area along the Kafr El-Sheikh road. Ahmed also told them exactly where he had buried the bag. The police found a plastic bag in that location containing the missing gold, a curtain rope, blood-stained clothes from his young daughter, Layla, a knife, and gloves. The presence of gloves indicated that the crime was premeditated and not just a spontaneous argument that escalated into violence. The police then intensified their questioning of Ahmed until he confessed all the details. Ahmed explained that the constant issues between him and his wife were due to 2 main reasons. First, she thought he was unambitious and didn't try to work 2 jobs like she did when they were in Saudi Arabia. He was content with his hospital job, unlike Mona. This brings us to the second reason. Ahmed often confided in his mother, who didn't like Mona and wanted them to divorce. His mother would encourage him, saying, "How can you let her talk to you like that? You're not a man if you allow this." Gradually, his mother's words got to him, and he started to resent Mona, feeling that she was better than him. The more he was influenced by his mother's negativity, the more hatred he felt for her. 4 months before the crime, Ahmed made a decision. By the time the new year came, Mona wouldn't be around to see it. He planned to carry out his crime on New Year's Eve. Ahmed woke up on December the 31st, 2018. Mona made him breakfast, and then they joked together. He said to her, "What do you think we play a new game to renew our relationship?" Mona agreed, trusting him. But why wouldn't she trust her husband, the father of her children, whom she had been with for more than 8 years? Ahmed then tied Mona's hands behind her back with tape and also taped her legs, all without her noticing, as she had her back turned to him. He then wrapped a curtain rope around her neck. She was still calm and unaware, but suddenly, Ahmed strangled her with the rope as she screamed in confusion until Mona lost consciousness. Ahmed put on the gloves he had brought and dragged her from the bedroom to the living room to create the scene that would make it look like she had been robbed and killed. But even after he took her to the living room, he wasn't sure if she was dead yet, so he grabbed a knife and slit her throat. In his confessions, Ahmed said that he sat next to his wife's body, not knowing what to do next, when suddenly his young daughter, Layla, entered and saw the scene. She screamed, so he quickly silenced her and did to her exactly what he had done to Mona, lying her down next to her mother, even though Layla was the closest person to him. But he killed her coldly. Ahmed then said that after he did what he did and thought about it, he wondered what would happen to the two boys inside the room and how they would be raised. Without reconsidering for even a second, he took the same knife and went to Abdullah and Omar's room. He killed Omar while he was asleep, but Abdullah almost sensed something, so he resisted. This is why Abdullah had wounds on his chest and arm. In this way, Ahmed had killed all four of them within about 15 minutes. Ahmed didn't change his blood-stained clothes. He just put on additional clothes over them and went downstairs pretending to go to work. He hid the bag with the gold and then went to the carpenter, the bank, and finally the fish shop, acting surprised by everything that had happened. The story Ahmed told in the beginning of the investigation led to the natural consequence of him being sentenced to death. He himself said at the beginning, "Execute me, I deserve it." However, during the trial, Ahmed tried to do anything to reduce his sentence. He claimed that he had discovered 6 months earlier that his wife was cheating on him and that he had seen messages between her and another man. Because of this, he killed her, hoping to make the crime look like an honor killing to potentially get a lighter sentence. But this did not work. The police confirmed that his statements had no basis in truth. He then tried to prove that he was mentally ill and that he was not responsible for his actions at the time. Until now, I really can't imagine how he was able to look into her eyes and into the eyes of his children. How could he look at them without hesitation, even for a second? Even if the devil was guiding him, how could he not back down at the last moment? But finally, in March 2019, Ahmed was sentenced to death by hanging.
رفقا بالقوارير ومن لا يرحم لا يرحم. حكمت المحكمة حضوريا وبإجماع الآراء بمعاقبة أحمد عبد الله زكي السيد بالإعدام.
That's it. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Stay tuned, God willing, for the next video.